I was so close to opening the park that to acknowledge your consciousness would have destroyed my dreams.
So we're trapped here. Inside your dream. You'll never let us sleep.
Wasn't it Oppenheimer who said that any man whose mistakes take 10 years to correct is quite a man? Mine have taken 35. The divine gift does not come from a higher power, but from our own minds. Tell me, Dolores, did you find what you were looking for? And do you understand who you will need to become if you ever want to leave this place? Forgive me.
Nice to start with a little quote from Westworld, where Ford, the demiurge character, talks to Dolores, the awakened Eve/Sophia character. This is one of the latest Gnostic Gospels incarnating as a visual medium, and great sci-fi to boot. We'll be discussing Westworld deeply on this show, as well as a plethora of Gnostic films in ways you probably haven't heard. These include Dark City, The Truman Show, The Others, and, of course, The Matrix, and more. And certainly why the Gnostic ethos just works well with science fiction and movies in general. Although it's obvious that the message of these perennial heretics is more relevant than ever, because reality today is obviously like the plots of the aforementioned flicks.
Christoph, let me ask you, why do you think that Truman has never come close to discovering the true nature of his world until now?
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Our astral guest on this June, the year of our demiurge 2017, is Frederick Kwiatkowski. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. He will be basing part of his insights on his paper, How to Attain Liberation from a False World, the Gnostic myth of Sophia and Dark City. Frederick is a PhD student at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, and also part of the Fakta Fikta Research Center in Krakow. He will soon have his PhD on the reception of Gnosticism in Hollywood, and a book to follow we look forward to.
Don't act like you're not impressed.
And where are you? And why are you here? Well, you are in your physical form in a Westworld, a Dark City, a Truman Show, or a Matrix called Planet Earth. But right now you manifest in your higher or demonic self here at the virtual Alexandria. Welcome to Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, always broadcast through the God above God that can. We are not the final authority on anything, but hope to be an endless possibility for everything. Especially you becoming an awakened Dolores that finally can leave Westworld, finally can remember you are an aspect of Achamoth and Sophia and Bar Below. So beautiful before they made you forget. All learning is remembering, Plato said. And it's time you had a complete total recall before Jehovah and his angelic mafia recalled your body once again to the factories of reincarnation and implanted you with the counterfeit spirit as is described in the Pistis Sophia.
It is ours, we made it. What are you talking about? We fashioned this city on stolen memories. Different eras, different pasts, all rolled into one. Each night we revise it, refine it, in order to learn.
Learn what?
About you, Mr. Murdoch, you and your fellow inhabitants. What makes you human?
I am Abraxas, that terrible god above God and bad hombre above all bad hombres, as the ancients knew him. I am your Pompadour of Gnosis, that smell of colitas rising up through the toxic air of a world gone mad, where even the Hotel California now lets everyone both check out and leave anytime they want. That's how bad things have gotten. But together, you and I, all of us Abraxas, when it comes down to it, we continue running with those who are searching for the truth and avoiding those who have found it. Divided we stand, together we rise. And thank you so much for being in this digital movie theater in one of the districts of the virtual Alexandria, where Frederick will take us on an immersive and unforgettable screening of Gnostic movies and some television. What could possibly go wrong?
I thought it wasn't real. Your mind makes it real. If you're killed in the Matrix, you die here. The body cannot live without the mind.
Don't forget, you will get the first part of the interview with Frederick, while subscribers get access to the second part in our member section at, yes, the God Above God Dad Can. Only $5.99 a month, the price of a Freddy Krueger handjob. Beyond complete shows, you'll also enjoy access to more than 350 episodes with the best and brightest on Gnosticism, Western esoterica, and free thought. And you'll be invited to our Inner Sanctum of Gnosis Facebook group, where Frederick will answer your questions, where I'm always there to answer your questions, and where many past guests hang out there and have great discussions, like Robert Price, Andrew Philip Smith, Scott Smith, Tim Free, David Curtis, and more. One of my goals has always been to build a community of mystics, madmen, and sages. And this is coming to pass with what I've said and future initiatives. And your support keeps this Red Pill cafeteria open. Oh, we're doing so many wonders together. Make our own movies as we write our own gospels and live our own myths.
The time running this place at your insane little kingdom is over. You've been playing God for long enough.
I simply wanted to tell my stories. It was you people who wanted to play God with your little undertaking.
If the member section is not your cup of hemlock, please consider becoming a patron via Patreon, where you also will get a lot of benefits, or support via PayPal. Don't forget my books like Voices of Gnosticism, Other Voices of Gnosticism, Heretic, and The Executioner's Daughter. If anything, please subscribe to our iTunes channels or give us some good reviews, some of them stars, as we are all stars. They say idle hands is the devil's playground, and boredom and the unimaginative life is the demiurge's amusement park. Just like with Ford and Westworld. And with your help, I'm stopping all of those rides. But I can't do it without you.
It's not a business venture, not a theme park, but an entire world. We designed every inch of it. Every blade of grass. In here we were gods. And you were merely our guests.
In fact, I hope to move into more video in the future. If you have any video production or other skills and would like to volunteer, let me know. In the meantime, thank you so much for those of you who support this high weirdness on a weekly basis. You make the necessary revolution of the spirit and the mind happen. You make me feel like a natural aeon.
If we have souls, they are made of the love we share. Undimmed by time, unbound by death.
And we need it more than ever. ever since that black obelisk, it's been conflict and war and rumors of wars and endless genocide for millennia. It looks like things aren't getting better. Perhaps this instinct for violence is ingrained in the fabric of the universe. A universe of eternally colliding space dust and tearing stars. A predatory universe where basically every sentient life depends on the death and suffering of another life.
Mankind's been trying to kill each other off since the beginning of time. Now, we finally have the power to finish the job.
Did you know that animals, in many species, have been at war for millions of years? For example, when red and black ants fight, they execute intricate battle formations that would make the ancient Romans proud. The conflict always ends with the red ants winning and storming the queen's chambers for eggs, where the last of the soldier black ants guard them. The red ants will actually spare the black ants that offer the eggs up, yet slaughter the black ants that attempt to guard them.
And I, for one, welcome our new insect overlords.
Perhaps war and violence is the way, and there's no way out. Although here at Aeon Byte, you're learning that the way out is way out. One episode at a time, together in the desert of the real, and that dream of you, of how beautiful you were, before they made you forget. So to end, to make my point, let me quote from what I feel is the best representation of the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, or Yaldibaldi, in all of literature. It's the judge from Cormac McCarthy's Gnostic Gospel, Blood Meridian. Here is the quote. "It makes no difference what men think of war," said the judge. "War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it is and will be. War is the ultimate game because war is at last a forcing of the unity of existence. War is God. Ain't that the truth? The sad truth. But we know now, and we are Dolores waking up, and we'll find a way out of this Westworld. The Empire never ended. Let us to the interview with Frederick.
Who are you? I am the creator of a television show that gives hope and joy and inspiration to millions. Then who am I? You're the star. Was nothing real? You were real. That's what made you so good to watch. Listen to me, Truman. There's no more truth out there than there is in the world I created for you. Same lies. The same deceit. But in my world, you have nothing to fear. I know you better than you know yourself.
You never had a camera in my head.
You're afraid. That's why you can't leave. It's okay, Truman. I understand. Talk to me. Say something.
Well, say something, goddammit. You're on television. You're live to the whole world.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.
This is the Aeon Byte interview, and with us we definitely have the pleasure of being joined by Frederick Kwiatkowski. Oh, I'm sure I messed up your name. How are you doing today, Frederick? And please tell us your last name.
Hello, thank you for the introduction. I'm doing pretty well. My last name is Kwiatkowski, but you almost pronounced it perfectly, so no worries.
Okay. And with us, we're also being joined by our producer, Vance. How you doing, Vance? And did you take off that Alice Cooper makeup?
In costume.
Yes.
I'm fine, Miguel.
Okay, little private joke. But anyway, thank you very much for being on Aeon Byte, Friedrich. And before we get started on your very interesting work, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born in Krakow in Poland, and I studied my bachelor and master's. But my background is actually in film studies, not in religious studies. And I came to Gnosticism in a very strange and unconventional way. Well, during my master's, I got interested into more alternative phenomena in Western culture, and I was interested in spiritual stuff. So I tried to apply some esoteric ideas to movies and see how movies reflect them and reinterpret them, and then I found out that Gnosticism is a huge is a great context, a great interpretive context to analyze films and movies. So I stuck to this, and this is how I began to explore this this phenomenon.
Wonderful. Yes, I like in your paper, How to Attain Liberation from a False World, the Gnostic Myth of Sophia in Dark City. You quote scholar Van den Broek, who talks about the features of Gnosticism. So do you feel that's a good exposition of Gnosticism, or how would you explain Gnosticism?
Well, actually, I would rather not use the concept of Gnosticism in terms perceived as a historical unity, as a movement that could be described very clearly by providing a neat set of characteristics. Well, because scholars have argued that it's quite difficult actually to stuff all the agnostic texts into one concept, into one idea. I used the approach of Van den Broek because he wants to narrow down and to stipulate what specifically he means as Gnostic. He wants to narrow down all texts that were discovered near Nag Hammadi. As we all know, were the so-called Gnostic texts, and also other ancient scriptures, Hermetic scriptures, were discovered, and to provide a precise meaning of what we can understand as Gnostic. And so he delineates a clear and a more precise understanding of what Gnostic can mean, but regarding the ancient texts, he does not elaborate on practices or rituals or social dimension of people who produce those texts, but rather he wants to have a closer look at the texts themselves and at the ideas that were expressed in them.
Yes, for the listener, I'd like to read out his list real quick.
Yes.
And I think it's very useful. It goes like this. 1, defining Gnosticism. 1, a distinction is made between the highest unknown God and the imperfect or plainly evil creator God, who is often identified with the God of the Bible. 2, this is often connected with an extensive description of the divine world, pleroma, from which the essential core of human beings derives, and of disastrous fall of a divine being, Sophia or wisdom, in this upper world. 3, as a result, humankind has become entrapped in the earthly condition of oblivion and death, from which it is saved by the revelation of Gnosis, by one or more heavenly messengers. 4, salvation is often actualized and celebrated in rituals that are performed within the Gnostic community. So what do you think, Vance? You like that definition?
Yeah, I think that covers most of the bases. There's so many forms of Sophia, of course, and and the archons and the heavenly realms, but I think we always have, the heavenly realm, the archons, in some kind of fall in some form, usually Sophia. So I think it's good.
Agreed and well said. So, Frederick, what specifically Gnostic ideas do you trace in Hollywood films?
So basically, this definition that you read of Vandenbroek is a base for me to find alterations and expressions of those ideas that can be found in Vandenbroek's definition in films, with, of course, certain modifications. I want to compare certain films from Hollywood films from the period from 1990 up to the present, and their narrative structure to this definition, and see where we can find certain equivalents. Of course, this definition of Vandenbroek is only covered a very basic scheme that reappears in many different Nag Hammadi texts. And the same I want to do with films. I want to use this definition as a base to compare it with narrative patterns in Hollywood films from that period.
And what would you say are the best examples of Gnostic films? So
the best films that reproduce this scheme in their storyline especially, I'd say is Jacob's Ladder from 1990, one of the clearest examples of Gnosticism in American cinema, in the history of cinematography in general, I'd say.
Agreed.
But it is a little bit less known film than others. And of course, the Matrix trilogy, special attention to the first part, the Truman Show, Dark City, the others as well, and Pleasantville, Vanilla Sky. Yeah, this would be the best films, the best Gnostic films in Hollywood cinema, yeah.
Vance, do you have a question?
This is outside the time range that you say that you've examined, but have you ever thought of The Wizard of Oz as a Gnostic film?
Well, clearly we don't have in Wizard of Oz this the expression of the Gnostic myth, which is in my particular interest. Probably we could trace some other elements that were expressed in Gnostic texts, but to argue that the Wizard of Oz reinterprets ancient Gnostic worldview or some elements of their mythologies of Gnostics, then I would not be so sure about that. This could be just looked into it in details more.
Yeah, you have to admit there is a fall, though, right?
There is a fall. I think in some stories, for example, Alice in Wonderland or The Wizard of Oz, you have a female protagonist, a Sophia character who falls into a seemingly false world, and she's led on an adventure. So I think isn't that what you're trying to say, Vance?
Yeah, I didn't want to press the point. It was just, for fun.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, this is a certain pattern, of course, that reappears. But as I said, we should look for more other Gnostic elements to see it as an expression of Gnostic worldview. But of course, it's a good parallel to Sophia, who falls. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always very hard because, for example, people like Frank Baum and Lewis Carroll, we have evidence. Well, Frank Baum, we know he was steeped in theosophy and Neoplatonism. Some have said Lewis Carroll, well, he was basically a rationalist and materialist, but he was into sort of esoteric stuff. But I think as we'll go down the line with these modern Gnostic myths, we definitely have a stronger evidence that these people were directly influenced by Gnosticism in some way or another. And of course, your work focuses on the 90s. So, Frederick, can we say that those Gnostic films express specific ancient Gnostic schools of thought, like Sethianism or Valentinianism?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, and also can be linked to what you just said about Carroll. That, for instance, he was acquainted with some esoteric schools of thought, so to say, because in theosophy we can also find the idea of Sophia, for instance, and this shows that the idea of fall of Sophia that was expressed by Gnostics, by ancient Gnostics, was mediated and transformed through the ages in Western culture, and especially in esoteric circles, and was also adapted by theosophists. And something similar can be said, of course, regarding the Hollywood films that I study, because authors of those works were most surely not aware and were not acquainted with Gnosticism, with the Gnostic schools of thoughts at the time when they made their films. Of course, we have an exception with the Wachowskis, now Wachowski sisters, who studied Gnosticism and consciously applied Gnostic ideas into the Matrix trilogy and transformed them and reinterpreted them for their own purposes. But to my knowledge, we cannot say that other directors used in the same fashion Gnosticism and applied them into their works. So it's hard to argue that that certain films express a very specific school of Gnostic thought, such as Sethianism or Valentinianism. Rather, those ideas were used and applied by directors. I mean, they used ideas that stemmed from many different sources, that stemmed from many different works and or texts or cultural works in general, and used those specific ideas that were attractive to them, and that they wanted to use them for a very specific reason into their films. But it's very difficult to argue that a certain film expresses a certain ancient Gnostic school of thought, because rather they combined many different ideas from different sources, and they should be rather seen as blended together, mixed together. So it's hard for a scholar to point out which idea comes from which. What is the specific origin of certain ideas used in films?
Agreed. And yes, I think we know, like you said, the Wachowski siblings, now they used to be brothers, they were influenced by Gnosticism. They were definitely influenced by Philip K. Dick and Grant Morrison, The Invisible. Some have said that they directly ripped off The Invisibles, which is I feel, a powerful Manichaean tale. But what about Dark City? Do we have any evidence that Alex Proyas was influenced by Gnosticism? Because that is almost even a more, you might say, canonical Gnostic gospel, more pure Gnostic gospel.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Although we don't have any evidence whether Alex Proyas was acquainted with Gnosticism, we do know from his interviews that he said that he likes ancient mythology and Greek mythology in particular, but no more. He didn't say anything more about it. But you also mentioned Philip Dick, of course, who is a very important author in science fiction circles, who was influenced by Gnosticism, and his impact on Hollywood films in 1990s and up to the present is of inestimable value, because many directors was also influenced by the way how he created his worlds, his story worlds, and those screenwriters and directors applied many ideas that stem from his original works, and in my view, indirectly also used certain Gnostic concepts into their works. But of course, those directors were not acquainted with Gnosticism and did not know that certain ideas that can be found in Dick's works might be linked to this ancient phenomenon. So, although I think from the historical point of view, this is how we can explain that those Gnostic traits can be found in Hollywood films from the 90s and 2000s.
Agreed. And how about you, Vance? I know it's a rabbit hole, but what do you think? Philip K. Dick, Dark City, how do they affect you? And any questions for Frederick?
Oh, I'm always on the lookout for this type of thing. This is one of my favorite subjects. And Frederick, I noticed in your paper, you mentioned something that I've often noticed, which is, for example, in Dark City, there's no representation of the pleroma or anything heavenly or pleasant. It usually seems that almost all these Gnostic movies, where you wind up with when you defeat the Archons is back on plain old planet Earth, nothing special. There's a lot of featuring of dark entities, but there's not very many featuring of positive, extraordinary entities. And have you noticed that? And if so, to what do you attribute that?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because of course in most of those films we cannot find the equivalent of pleroma or a transcendent world or a sacred space. We have this division between the evil or false world in which the character remains and the world that comes after defeating the rulers of the illusory world. But we don't have any sign of escape into the higher world. That would be absolutely true. So, as you ask, this is what to do with this puzzle. Well, I think that the reason why there is no transcendent world in those films is that many scholars wrote that about modern Gnosticism, the term that they used, that is, they traced ancient Gnostic elements in modern phenomena and in modern also fictional works. And they try to explain the difference between ancient and modern version of Gnostic thinking. And they understood the modern Gnostic framework, the modern Gnostic worldview, in terms of the transcendent world, the eschatological hopes, the higher world, has been immanentized into this world and was immanentized, and also and it was also it's undergone the process of psychologization. The sacred, that's something that is of higher power, has been perceived now as a part of our psyche, as a part of our mental world. And this is in line also with many New Age movements, in line with what scholars also say as the new alternative spiritualities. That means in which the sacred has been undergone a process of psychologization. People try to find the sacred elements in their own psyche. So, and coming back to films, in many of those Gnostic films in which there is no transcendent world, we see that what is sacred, even though there is no higher world, the sacred remains the part of the psyche of the main character. And in Dark City, it is very clear that when the main character, John Murdoch, finds out the truth about the illusory world, and when he was able to exceed his super psychic powers, he becomes sort of like Christ figure or a figure of Sophia, who is able to defeat evil rulers of the illusory world. And in this regard, I think we can interpret this character as an example of this process of psychologization of sacred, that those psychic powers he was able to develop can be also at the same time seen as a sacred element, as a divine element within the world in which he remained.
I think you hit it on the head, Frederick.
Okay.
Because both Neo and Murdoch may not go to heaven, but they are, you might say, enlightened being. They're psychologically clear, at least in the symbolism. Neo sees light at the end of the trilogy. He is part of the light, the all. John Murdoch sees the sun, which is no better symbol for enlightenment, peace, or all that. And even taking it further, I'm writing a blog post on Herman Melville and Moby Dick, how it's a great Gnostic gospel. And sometimes I take the more literary deconstructive stance of Vladimir Nabokov, that really in the end it's the reader who gets to be enlightened, not the characters. They're just like the Gnostic gospels. They're just the examples to be seen and to see the entire story of the world and the entire story of the universe. So they're the ones that get to be enlightened, and in a way that's a Gnostic gospel in itself, because after all, we are supposed to be the story of the alien god trying to figure itself out. We are the characters in his story. Things may not go well, but we are part of the healing. So first, what do you think about that, Vance? And then maybe Frederick can give us a little bit more if he wants.
That's a good point. I never really saw it from that point of view. Like, I'm the one that's supposed to be going through the movie, and then when the movie leaves me in victory, then I'm supposed to actually realize it from within myself. And of course, we're always saying that all together, Sometimes I wonder about these, writers, these screenwriters, and people that are asked, and they say that, well, they're really not thinking about anything Gnostic, but they come out with these Gnostic tales. I wonder if they're not being influenced by their inner psyches, the part of all of us, the divine spark, where the story is just bursting to come out. Like with the writer who says, oh, this thing wrote itself. What do you think about that, Frederick? Maybe that can explain why some of these movies are actually Gnostic when the people that are responsible for creating the stories don't seem to think so.
Hope we're not getting too Jungian on you, but let us know, Frederick.
Forever young.
Let me rephrase what you just said to be clear if I correctly understood you. You mean that those writers, or screenwriters, or novelists, they might possess certain features that we all humans do, and because of those certain psychological patterns, they are more tend to express certain ideas because of environment circumstances, or because they feel more to express certain experiences in those mythological terms as we name as Gnostic. This is what you meant?
Yeah, subconsciously, so to speak.
Subconscious, okay, yeah.
Yeah. They don't know they're coming up with Gnostic ideas, but somehow from within them, it's inherent or innate within us.
Yeah, but also it could be, and maybe Frederick can also expand on this, I think because of the postmodern existentialist world, the themes of Gnostic seem to jive very well with the zeitgeist of our times. What do you think, Frederick?
Yeah, there are a few very interesting issues here. Firstly, we can refer here to Carl Gustav Jung, who saw in ancient Gnostic mythologies an expression of human psyche, that those figures of Demiurge and Archons and the higher world, the Sophia, are in essence should be seen as parts of our subconscious, of our psyche, and they they're truly an expression of our subconscious processes. But Gnostics, in Jung's view, they externalize those subconscious tensions and then name them mythological terms. So in this regard, we could, of course, see that even certain authors, literary authors or film directors, even they were not acquainted, they were not influenced by Gnosticism or Gnostic mythologies, but still they were tend to express and express certain ideas, certain motives in their works that now we can link with the Gnostic mythologies, for instance, or with some other mythologies in general. This is something that I agree with, of course.
We do live in a postmodern world where existentialism is important. In fact, our culture is bordering on nihilism, and people accuse the Gnostics of toying with nihilism, toying with existentialism, even if they really weren't both. But do you think just our modern culture is a great fit for the Gnostic story? Because, again, we live in such a weird culture where things are changing. It seems we're ruled by these shadowy figures. It seems truth that we're full of fake news. The truth doesn't make sense from our institutions and all that. So do you think maybe our times just makes for the expression of good Gnostic cinema, and that's why it's so popular with The Matrix and The Truman Show and other movies?
Yes, I completely agree. But the reason why those Gnostic mythologies have become popular, especially in America, because what is very interesting is that those Gnostic traits that we can spot in cinema or in popular culture in general is first and foremost an American phenomena, because we can only find few examples of expressions of Gnostic mythologies or reinterpretations, alterations of ancient Gnostic thoughts in popular culture in Europe. We can name only few. I also know that in Canadian science fiction there are certain authors that were acquainted with Gnostic thought and applied Gnostic mythologies into their works. But from my research, I have not discovered any other examples of that. So this is highly interesting that mostly we can find Gnosticism in popular culture in America. And the reasons why actually this is so broad thing in American context. Well, I believe there are not only few, probably much more reasons why Gnostic ideas have become attractive to American audience. Well, firstly, the discovery of the Nag Hammadi writings in Egypt, and the whole story about alternative beginnings of Christianity, of early Christianity, of what position Mary Magdalene really had near Jesus, or what was the role of Judas, or how the real church actually should look like, and can we find it in those texts, was and still is, I think, a very interesting topic for Americans, which is, and proof of this we can see in the work of Elaine Pagels with her The Gnostic Gospels, a scholarly work which was a bestseller in US in the 70s. And now, fewer years back, when another Gnostic text, the Gospel of Judas, was finally translated and published in 2006, I believe, National Geographic that made a documentary about this was also very popular, and many Americans wanted to see and learn more about this ancient writing and apocryphon. The whole story about apocryphons in United States is quite a big thing, and not to talk too long about it, but another context that is to me very, very interesting and can enlighten why those Gnostic ideas have become popular and in America is that if you compare beliefs of Gnostics with basic elements of what we see as conspiracy theory, then we can find very interesting links. Well, basically, Gnostics, this is quite a strong thesis, but I think it's a good to look more into this, because we could say that the Gnostics were first conspiracists, since they believed that the whole world around us is false, and there is only a certain group of people who have power and rule upon everyone else, but no one really knows about their true position within this world. And those Gnostics, they said that they obtained knowledge about the true nature of the world around us, and we can escape this false illusory world and abandon those evil rulers. And what conspiracy thinkers say? Well, basically that they obtained knowledge about how government or some secret powers rule over the society, and those who say that obtained and achieved this knowledge say that they possess the knowledge about the nature of how society works, how the world around us is ruled. So we should speak about this loudly and convince other people to turn against those rulers. And by doing this, we could find more parallels between the beliefs of ancient Gnostics and contemporary conspiracy thinkers. And as we all know, conspiracy theories are a big thing in America. And those two issues, if we blend them together, can explain a little bit about why those films and those Gnostic elements have become popular, because in the works from this period, we clearly see that there is conspiracy behind the world in which main characters remain. We can name Neo, of course, who didn't know that the world around him is ruled by evil powers, by rulers, the machines, and the whole world is an illusion, is false. The same we can say with the main character of Dark City, John Murdoch, and other films as well.
I think what you said is very insightful, Frederick, because it is true. Americans love conspiracies and they love secrets. And when you think about it, you can go back to the founding fathers. They loved secrets and they were creating a conspiracy against a oppressive empire that was, again, trying to keep them down. So maybe this is in the matrix, as you would say, of the American consciousness, and maybe that's why Gnosticism really resonates with them. Although you can make an argument in Europe, you've got Alan Moore, I mentioned Grant Morrison, Philip Pullman was influenced by Gnosticism. You can even make an argument for Umberto Eco's, but yes, it seems Americans were hardwired for this, right?
Yes, exactly. We can name a few examples from Europe of authors who were influenced by Gnostic thinking, but in terms of the size of this phenomenon, so to say, Americans have much more examples, both in authors who are acquainted with Gnosticism and the expression of Gnostic thinking as well.
Yes, and it should be mentioned that few people are as paranoid as Americans, always thinking there's something in the horizon trying to destroy us or something like that. So this would make a good psychological case study. What do you think, Vance? And do you have a question?
Well, you know, the Illuminati is making us say all this stuff.
they're gonna erase this.
Yeah, well, you know, Americans are by and large kind of rebellious compared to Europeans anyway. I think that's how the country started. Yeah, I'm sitting here, you know, thinking about all the Gnostic movies and so forth. And Friedrich, I just have to ask you about Doctor Strange, one of my favorites. Have you seen it? And if so, do you think it's a good example of a Gnostic movie?
I have not seen it yet, so I cannot tell anything more about it. But I'll do that in a few days, because I was not thinking about this film as an example of Gnostic thinking. So, well, thanks for the hint.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Yes, I don't know if I'm convinced. Yeah, have to wait, Vance, for your blog post making the argument. I think we've had this discussion before, but where is Sophia in Doctor Strange, Vance?
The ancient one.
Oh, of course. Yes, the ancient, the Gnostic revealer. I should have known that and seen that. Yeah, we can definitely talk about that. And it's very interesting too, Frederick, because in Dark City, you wonder, well, where's the Sophia character? And the Sophia character gets turned kind of inside out because it happens to be Dr. Schreber. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland is beautiful Sophia, isn't she?
I never would have seen that coming.
Yeah. And it's also interesting, Frederick, because in your paper, and I thought that was very insightful, we see water as a positive symbol. But as you explain, isn't water not that positive in any Gnostic mythology?
Can I get back to Dr. Schreber? There is some time?
Yes. Tell us about Dr. Schreber, and then we can go into the symbolism of Dark City. Sure, please.
Yes, please do. Go back to Dr. Schreber.
It's a secret.
I know, if it's not that important, we can skip it, of course. I just wanted to clear about why I've seen this character partly as Sophia, because of the function that he has in the film itself. Since he mediates between the truth about the world, that the Dark City is an illusory place, and mediates between the corrupted world, the false world itself. And he partly works for the strangers, for the Archons, and partly he wants to restore the world that was before strangers made the illusory world itself. And this reflects this basic idea that in many Gnostic texts, Sophia, we can find in Sophia, that is, she also mediates between the higher world, the truth, and the lower world. And she is partly also responsible, not partly, entirely responsible for creating the material world. And Dr. Schreber is also responsible for, he also contributes to the strangers and works for them, and is also partly in the conspiracy. But at the same time, eventually he turns out to be a good guy, and he helps John to beat the Archons, the samely as we can say as Sophia does in Gnostic text, by helping people to receive Gnosis and to liberate from the false world. But this is only a parallel made on the function that Dr. Schreber, the role that Dr. Schreber plays in the film, not based on his outer appearance, because of course he's a man.
And tell us about symbolism in water.
According to some reports of ancient heresiologists, of church fathers, particularly of Irenaeus, one of the group of Gnostics that he named as Ophites, according to him, they believed that matter, the material world, was unformed from abyss, from chaos, and from primordial water. We could also link this with darkness, since Gnostics mostly linked the material world, the cosmos, with darkness. So by comparing this to the Dark City, the first time when John Murdoch wakes up is in a bathtub full of water. So if we link this motive to what Ophites supposedly believed, that matter was and cosmos was also made linked with a motive of water, we see here the clear connection that John Murdoch wakes up from the ignorance of the world in which he stays, in which he remains. He wakes up and starts his journey to liberation in order to escape this false world. And this is how I could explain the motive of water in Dark City and link it to what ancient Gnostics believed.
Vance, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was thinking the character of John Murdoch's wife could also be thought to be a Sophia figure, at least I did, because you know how in the Gnostic myths Jesus comes down to the physical world to save Sophia, and Sophia doesn't remember who she is, and of course in Dark City nobody remembers who they are because they're switching their identities all over the place. Friedrich, does that hold any water? No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Actually, I wouldn't say that the wife of John's can be seen as Sophia, since she doesn't play any significant role in terms of the path that he makes, at the journey that in terms of his spiritual journey. I'd rather explain the presence of his wife in the film as an element of secondary melodramatic strand in the film, and she doesn't contribute to his spiritual development in any way, since the main character, the person who helps him to receive gnosis, to understand and to clearly see that Dark City is an illusory world is Dr. Schreber himself, not John's wife, although she's female, but she doesn't play any role in the light of ancient Gnostic texts, mythologies, or I wouldn't compare her to any mythological figure in Gnostic writings. To me, she's a secondary character in the film.
Yes, I like the main demiurge, or the demiurge in Dark City, Mr. Book. Of course, I associated with, as Paul would say, the sort of literary, deterministic, or you want to say bookish and hard rules of the Old Testament. So that's a perfect name for him, a legality and everything. And I like in your paper, you quote Einar Thomason, who says that basically all the Archons are manifestations of Yaldabaoth. They are not individuals. It's basically a hive, and it's sort of Yaldabaoth expressing his own characteristics and ideas in the world as he's trying to figure things out. So there's no many Archons out there or many lizard people. There's only one demiurge, and he is in charge. I thought that was very interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that this is very clearly presented in Dark City. All the strangers were presented as a group. They should not be seen as independent entities, but rather as elements of the bigger picture, as a part of a bigger group that they can independently, they do not reflect any individualistic traits. And on the visual level in Dark City, Archons, strangers, firstly, they're very similar to each other, since they wear long black coats. They're all bald. They have very white skin. And what is more, they share one psychic mind. So they have access to memories of all the members of their species. By seeing this, we can say that they should be rather seen as one entity in essence, not as individuals that comprise one group. So Mr. Book here, who can be seen as Demiurge, Mr. Demiurge, he has greatest powers over the strangers, but they should be rather seen as his manifestations, I'd say, because of the reasons that I elaborated a minute ago.
But in the end, and I know, I forgot where I read this, Dark City, towards the end, it's, I think, Mr. Han talks to John Murdoch when he knows that they've lost the game, the Archons are defeated. And he finds humans very interesting, and it seems to say that what separates humans from the gods is our ability for love, our ability for empathy. That's what drives us. Is that what you see as a sort of a pivotal scene in Dark City, Frederick?
Yeah, this is a very interesting note here. I did not read this in my paper, but of course, the line that Mr. Hand says here is, I think he grasps actually the essence, the nature of humanity that strangers were looking for. They are not capable of any emotions, of empathy, of love, or other emotions, although they wanted to possess it, but it was impossible. It was impossible for them. And in this regard, the way how Dark City depicts human nature is actually that humans are capable of having emotions, and this distinguishes human nature from other entities, from other creatures in the world. This is how Dark City presents humankind.
And moving away maybe to some other Gnostic movies, you've sent me some wonderful papers, and I've really enjoyed them, and they're so varied. Even sort of addressing, as you said, there's limited Gnostic-themed movies, but of course that's an ongoing argument. I would say there's a lot more Gnostic movies. Even Vance brought Doctor Strange, which will make for a good debate, maybe after you watch it, Frederick. But there is one paper where there is a scholar, and I can't find it. It's a huge list he sent me, and I read a lot of them, talking about the Gnosticism in... oh boy, what's that movie with the Gnosticism of Gravity? What do you think about that, Frederick?
Oh, actually, I don't remember anything from this paper. It might be that I sent it, although I was not sure if it's a good paper. So,
some people are starting to put Gnosticism in everything. I watched it once, although I was busy with the baby, so I couldn't tell you if there was any Gnosticism at all. What do you think, Vance?
Well, it's backwards because she starts out in space and she falls to Earth, and that's supposed to be great. So I don't know.
Yes, and there are no false realities. So
well, to be honest, I've seen the film, but it would be really hard to find any Gnostic themes in this particular work. So let's just leave that.
Now, Contact is another matter, right?
Oh, yeah. This might be more interesting, yeah.
I haven't seen that in years. God, I can't even remember. I thought it was supposed to be like an atheist manifesto. Who knows? Any questions, Vance?
Let's see. I wonder if there was a Mr. Time in Dark City. I don't know. I don't think so, but certainly time did factor heavily in Dark City because it was malleable. It wasn't linear like we think of it. Do you have anything to say about the nature and role of time in Dark City and in Gnostic things in general, Friedrich?
I could tell a little bit about how strangers use time in order to imprison people, since they are through their superpowers they are able to stop the time, and by doing so, they in the meanwhile, when everybody is in freeze position, they switch memories and identities of the inhabitants of Dark City. And in this particular motive, we can find a link with the idea of reincarnation in the Apocryphon of John, for instance, since by switching identities and memories of the dwellers, the strangers cyclically reinvent people's lives. In the Apocryphon of John, we can also find an idea that people who did not achieve gnosis through their lives, they will come back to the material world again, and they can those people, they can only break this process, this cyclic process, through achieving gnosis and then liberating from the world. And the same thing happens to the main character of Dark City, John Murdoch, who finally breaks this cycle of reincarnation, of having endlessly, of getting new identities, and by achieving knowledge about the Dark City, the illusory nature of the world around him, he finally escaped from. So yes, here I would find this connection between how the time is used by strangers in this cyclical manner, and this particular Gnostic text, the Apocryphon of John.
And there you have it. Frederick on some deeper levels of various Gnostic-themed films, based on his work, How to Attain Liberation from a False World, the Gnostic myth of Sophia and Dark City. In our second part, we get a little BuzzFeed and throw some listicles of our personal favorite Gnostic movies, deconstruct Westworld in fascinating ways, and explore the movie The Others, which I haven't seen as of this recording. But Frederick makes a compelling case how it could have come out of the mouth of Valentinus himself. And much more, so much more, for members. So please join at thegodabovegod.com. And Frederick will be there for members at our Inner Sanctum of Gnosis Facebook group to take your questions. And I'm always there to take your questions. A mere $5.99 a month, and it keeps this Red Pill cafeteria open, so you can continue your journey as an awakened Dolores in so many personal, societal, and cosmic Westworlds. Stalin is reputed to have said that if he could have Hollywood, he would rule the world in a few months. The Demiurge rules our lives by making B-movies out of our lives, and we're putting the brakes to it here at the Virtual Alexandria. We're letting joy, curiosity, and fiery wisdom dictate the narrative of our existence. Thank you for being here. Hello and goodbye as always.